Opening credits. Dragon Baller's Bride. A Dragon Shifter Paranormal Romance. By Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated, using Google technology. Chapter 1. It wasn't that Adam hated his career, far from it. He had loved the career he had just said goodbye to, and he looked forward to retirement. The fact that his career had made him wealthy enough to retire at age 33 and live in comfort the rest of his life was an added bonus, especially since he intended to still do occasional work. For right now he was content with taking a break and figuring out what that work would be, but in the back of his mind he knew it would likely be either sports broadcasting or some sort of coaching. He also knew that wasn't all that he wanted in life. Something Adam had always wanted, but hadn't been able to get yet, was to have a family. He wanted a wife by his side who he loved, and children running all over the house causing mischief. He wanted a little boy who would get caught with his hand in the cookie jar, only to look at him with big innocent eyes. He wanted a little girl who got into her mother's makeup, and as he washed her hands and face and scolded her, he would silently be laughing on the inside and know that as soon as he was alone he would let it all out. Then they would get to the teenage years, and he'd be able to coach his children in the sport he loved so much while they pretended not to care about spending time together. None of that would happen though, if he didn't find someone to share his life with. Growing up, he had never thought it would be so hard. People were getting together all the time, so it didn't appear hard. But as he had grown older, he had realized that relationships were hard work, and those that made it were stronger because of all the trials they'd endured together. So far the women he had been with had all ended up leaving for one reason or another, even if he had felt that some of them could have been the one he spent the rest of his life with. Initially, he thought it was his career, but as some of them stayed around longer and got used to his career, he wondered if it was his shifter abilities. It made him overprotective and a tad controlling, which many women liked at first and then realized they couldn't live with. He didn't want to force it, but he was terrified of not finding the woman of his dreams. His backup plan was to adopt, and he had decided that if at age 35 he still hadn't found the right woman, he would go that route. He had too much love to give, and if he wasn't meant to find a woman, he at least wanted kids. His overprotective nature would probably drive his children insane, and he knew he would have strict rules, but he also knew that if nothing else, they would be happy and healthy and want for nothing. Part of this plan was to hire a younger housekeeper who would be familiar with the house when those children came along, and who would be able to help out when needed. He didn't want a nanny, but he also knew he was a lousy cook, and he didn't want everyone to starve to death or live on takeout. With that in mind, he had placed an advertisement in the paper without his name in the hopes of finding someone. He wouldn't be the one doing the interviews, his agent would, but he was confident he would find someone competent. Only a few miles away, Beth was sitting at the breakfast table, looking over the classifieds. She had to find a job. It wasn't an option not to, as she would end up homeless, but there wasn't much around that she was qualified for. Over the past few weeks, she had applied to so many jobs, she had lost track, but nobody had called her back to discuss it further or interview her. It was frustrating, and she had always hated it, but there wasn't much else she could do. She was 25, and without family nearby, she was completely alone. There were plenty days that she wondered why she had moved to this town to begin with, but in the back of her mind, she knew it was because of Christian. He had been charming and she had fallen head over heels for him, but 2 years after moving, he had told her he no longer loved her and he had told her to leave. He had been wealthy and she hadn't had to work, so finding a job without much job history had been hard. The town of Evelyn was beautiful and she had loved it, but it was also a town for the wealthy, and everything was expensive. She didn't fit in, and she couldn't afford to stay much longer. Several hours later, after sending out a few more applications, Beth's phone rang and she looked at it in shock. It hadn't rang in so long, she had nearly forgotten what it sounded like, but she quickly got over that and answered it. 5 minutes later she hung up, shock evident in every part of her body. She had gotten an interview, but it was for a job she knew she wasn't qualified for. She knew absolutely nothing about housekeeping, and the interview was that afternoon, so after a moment's hesitation she changed and ran out the door. The library had internet, and she intended to spend the rest of the time before the interview looking up everything she could find about housekeeping. The man she interviewed with had seemed impressed by her, and had told her she met all the qualifications for the job. The job would require her to live at the home she would be working at, and once there were children she would be asked to help out with them. She loved children, always hoping to one day have a large family herself, and the prospect of living with and working for a younger couple with younger children appealed to her. She didn't even hear him tell her what her salary would be, accepting the job on the spot. She remembered thinking it was good pay on top of everything else, but her mind was focused on everything else. When he asked when she could start, she had blurted out that she could start immediately, and he had laughed, but it had been a genuine amused laugh, not a mocking laugh. She was speaking the truth, as the lease on her apartment was up in a week, and she had to get out of there. Contract in hand, Beth was once again sitting at the kitchen table that evening. She had finally looked it over more carefully, and she realized why the pay was so good, and why she had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. She wouldn't be working for a young couple, she would be working for Adam Jones. Rich and handsome Adam, the football player she had followed for so many years. The comment about future children had her curious, but she knew she wouldn't ask. Instead, she would focus on not screwing this up and being the best housekeeper he had ever had. Chapter 2. The morning of the day she was to report to Adam's house, Beth looked around her studio apartment one last time. She had been told movers would come to take all her furniture to storage and to label the boxes she wanted with her, as they would be taking them to the house for her. She would have a suite to herself, and as it was already fully furnished, she wouldn't need most of her belongings. She had been told she could wear whatever she felt most comfortable in while working, and her suite would be hers completely. Nobody would enter it without her being there, and once there would be children, it would be off limits to them. She was expected to keep the house clean, without having set hours, and to cook for Adam and any guests he might have. Otherwise, she could do what she wanted. She had been told Adam would be there to meet her, and would show her the house, after which he reportedly had a meeting somewhere. On that thought, she looked at the clock and realized she had to leave or she would be late, which wouldn't make a good impression on her first day. She had long since sold her car to pay for rent, but it was only a few miles to the house, so she intended to walk. It was a beautifully warm morning, and as she walked down the street, she felt content at getting to stay in the area. Christian had stayed along with his new girlfriend, and while she saw him on occasion, she tried her best to avoid him. He never tried to talk to her when they did see one another, and she was glad for it, as she wasn't sure she wouldn't just punch him in the face first chance she got. Arriving right on time, Beth rang the buzzer at the gate, only for the man she would be working for to come down the driveway around the same time. He looked as beautiful as she imagined from his pictures, all muscle and strong physique, while walking with a grace she wished she possessed. His smile was almost blinding, and she found herself looking around as opposed to him in an effort to remain standing upright. It wouldn't do to fall flat on her face on her first day, it would probably be a deal breaker. "I'm Adam, you must be Beth. Did you take a cab?" Adam asked as soon as he was near her and had opened the gate. "No, I walked. I live not far from here." "You can keep your car here, there is plenty of parking in the garage. I'll have one of my men get it for now, let's walk up to the house. The buzzer down here rings in the entryway and in the security office. Normally security would answer it, but I let them know I was already on my way down to meet you. There are cameras everywhere, so you are certainly safe in here." "I don't own a car and this is beautiful," Beth said, trying to keep the embarrassment out of her voice as she looked around in awe at the beautiful landscaping all around her. It was clear he had gardeners, as she was fairly certain it took a lot of work to keep it looking like this. "I'll make sure to show you where I keep the keys to the SUV then, since you'll need something to drive to get groceries and such. You would have had access to it anyway, so that's not a problem. If it's low on gas, Simply let security know and they'll have someone fill it up. Thank you, Beth said softly, feeling embarrassed that she hadn't even thought about groceries or needing a car, but thankful that he was so understanding of it. He hadn't even blinked an eye at her statement that she didn't have a car, though she was sure he was mocking her inwardly. You're welcome. Anytime you need anything, let me know and we'll make it happen. This will be where you live, and I want it to be comfortable for you as well. I made sure the pantry and fridge were stocked with my favorites, just to get you started, but otherwise I'll leave it up to you for future weeks. I'm not allergic to anything. I'll show you around the house, and then I'll show you your room. Are you from around here? Not originally. I moved here a few weeks ago and haven't left since. I was close to moving though, there aren't many jobs around here. I must admit I have no idea about any of that, but considering how small it is, I could see that. What brought you here? A guy named Christian, as stupid as that sounds. He left me for someone else. That's his loss then. It wouldn't be Christian Collier, would it? It is, Beth said in hesitation, hoping they weren't friends or something. Never liked that guy, and the woman he is with now is a real piece of work. I occasionally see him at the country club. He's always flaunting his money, even though he is much less wealthy than 75% of the members there. I can't stand when people act superior. I can't see someone like you with him, so I dare say you are better off now. He changed when he got that inheritance and moved here. The house had come into view, and Beth couldn't help but admire it. It was done in beautiful yellow stucco, which glowed in the sunlight. Each window had a flower basket hanging from it, and it truly looked picturesque. As they walked through the front door, she expected big and imposing, but instead, she saw a beautifully decorated home. The colors were light, the wood medium dark, and the furniture looked comfortable. It was very obvious that it was meant to be a family home, not a bachelor pad, and she instantly fell in love with it. She also instantly knew there would be a lot of cleaning involved, even though a lot of these rooms were likely never used. The kitchen had a large island and breakfast bar, and she suspected that he ate there more than he ate in the dining room. It was the last room they came to, and Adam easily opened the fridge and pulled out a pitcher of tea, offering her some with ease. I prefer my tea made with 2 cups of sugar per gallon. Isn't that the only way it should be made? Beth asked, sipping the tea she thought tasted amazing. I always thought so. So what do you think? Your home is absolutely beautiful. You are lucky to live here. And so are you. I know you are the housekeeper, but I want you to feel at home here. Use the pool, use the gym, run barefoot around the house. It's all fine by me, as long as you are happy. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I'll admit I've never used this kitchen to cook and it's all new, so I left the owner's manuals over there just in case you need them. The movers should be here soon with your things, so I'll leave you to unpack the rest of the day and you can start for breakfast tomorrow. I have a meeting to get to in a few minutes, but I'll order in dinner. I expect you to eat with me, unless I have guests, just because it's ridiculous for us both to eat alone. Do you think you'll be all right by yourself? Yes, I'll be fine. I'll probably do some more exploring until the movers get here. Once Adam had left the room, Beth decided to have a closer look at all the rooms. She knew she would have to clean it all, so she might as well take the time to figure out what she was supposed to be doing. The previous housekeeper had apparently left several months prior, and while there had been regular cleaning, she could tell the whole house could really use a deep cleaning and dusting. If nothing else, she knew how to dust, so as she walked through the house, she decided she would start with that as it would make everything look instantly better. Her biggest concern was cooking, but right as she had walked back into the kitchen to see if there were any cookbooks, the movers arrived and she knew she had to get unpacked. It was clear Adam expected her to keep her room somewhat organized as well, and that he wanted her to unpack, so as soon as everything was moved in, she started doing exactly that. Her bedroom was large, with a king-size bed and small sitting area. The walk-in closet could hold more clothes than she could ever dream of having, while the bathroom had both a shower and a jacuzzi tub that she was fairly certain she'd use a lot. It didn't take her long to unpack everything, and once she had everything where she wanted it to be, she once again made her way out into the kitchen. She hoped Adam wasn't home yet, and she could read the instruction manuals for the appliances before he returned, but right as she walked into the kitchen, so did he. "I got Chinese, I hope you don't mind." "Chinese sounds wonderful," Beth replied with a smile. "I'd say I'd get the plates, but I have not yet located those." Adam laughed, and Beth found herself really liking his laugh. It was warm and truly sounded happy, instead of fake and forced. He easily walked over to a cabinet and got 2 plates out before opening a drawer for silverware. She mentally memorized the location, knowing she'd use it a lot and not wanting to open every cabinet every time she needed something. Adam opened all the containers, and she noticed he had gotten a variety of things, likely just because he didn't know what she would like, and she instantly spotted her favorite, which was sweet and sour chicken. Dinner was eaten in silence, with neither of them having much to say. Beth was too shy to truly talk to him, and she wasn't sure why he wasn't saying anything either, but she supposed he was used to the silence. Easily helping to clean up, which only took a minute since he had a dishwasher, Beth looked around looking a little bit lost. She wasn't sure what she was expected to do with the rest of her evening, now that they'd eaten. She was certain he had things to do, however, so in an attempt to not make things awkward, she thanked him for dinner and made her way to her rooms. She had a few books she hadn't read yet, and supposed she could read those while she still had the time. She had no doubt in her mind that she would get busier soon, having to keep up with this entire house and Adam's meals. Chapter 3. Beth had woken up early in an attempt to explore the kitchen before she actually had to prepare breakfast for Adam. He had left her a list of things he had bought, and from it she could easily see what he had for each meal. While his lunches varied, his breakfast often consisted of bacon, eggs, and toast, and the only thing she knew how to make was toast. That was, if you didn't count cereal. She quickly went to work getting ready to prepare breakfast before Adam came downstairs. Pulling out her trusty but outdated iPhone, she pulled up some YouTube videos and followed along. First, she cracked several eggs into a large pan that had been preheated and watched as they began to cook. It looked so good so far. Next, she placed several strips of bacon into another heating pan. She wasn't sure how much Adam liked to eat, so she used the entire package of bacon. Adam was an elite athlete, so she figured he ate a lot of food, even though nowadays he probably wasn't training the way he used to since he was retired. He still kept in great shape though, and muscles like his had to be well fed. She wasn't sure how Adam liked his eggs, but she preferred hers over medium, so she just guessed that it would be okay to do that. It went better with toast because she loved to dip her toast in the yolk. She wondered if he did the same. She let the bacon cook until it was crispy, but not overly crispy, again guessing as to how he liked it. She followed the same procedure with the toast. Sitting everything down on the table, she was very proud of herself. She hadn't burnt anything and it all looked really good, causing her stomach to rumble, which she took as a good sign. She noticed the coffee maker was automatic, and it looked like Adam had set it up the night before and programmed it to turn on at a specific time. She quietly thanked him for remembering, because she had totally forgotten about the coffee until now, when it started to smell really good. She located the cups and poured a few cups of coffee and grabbed some creamer from the fridge. She noticed that Adam had several different flavors. She was going to sample a few this morning, that was for sure. She definitely appreciated that Adam was a coffee lover like herself. It was important to start the day off right, and she was never able to get fully awake without getting her coffee into her in the morning. She finished the breakfast preparations with a couple of glasses of orange juice, thankful that Adam bought pulp-free. Pulp was just disgusting, and she couldn't for the life of her understand how anyone drank juice with pulp in it. Just then Adam came bouncing into the room. He was freshly showered and wearing some fancy yet casual clothes. He appeared to have been up for a while. "Hey, that looks great," Adam said, sitting down to his place at the table. Beth decided it was okay for her to do the same. Thanks, Beth said. Did you sleep well? Yeah, I slept fine. I just got back from my morning workout. It always works up an appetite. I'm glad to see you made a lot of food. I wasn't sure how much to make, Beth said. You did perfect. I eat a lot, but not as much as I used to. Really? That sounds like a fun job, getting to eat a lot of food every day and not get fat, Beth said. It became a job, actually. When you have to spend 3 hours in the gym and 5 hours on the training field every day, and then you have to eat every 3 hours, it gets to be a chore. I'm happy now to just eat normally, but I also have to make sure I don't overdo it or I will get fat. I can't tell you how many guys I see who are retired and 2 years later they are carrying around a 30-pound spare tire. Ouch. How was your room? Did you sleep comfortably? Adam asked, sipping the coffee. Yes, it's great. It may be the most comfortable bed I've ever slept in. I'm glad to hear that, Adam said. They chatted about some mundane things over the rest of breakfast, although Adam didn't really talk that much. He was a man who really loved his food. He scarfed the bacon and eggs down quickly, and gulped up several cups of coffee and juice in the process. Beth only finished about half of her plate, and she was stuffed. She was used to grabbing a few Pop-Tarts and heading out the door, but she could definitely get used to this sort of food every morning, even if she was the one cooking it. She actually found she didn't mind preparing the food, and the breakfast had actually been really easy. Adam excused himself after breakfast. He had some errands in town to run. Beth didn't pry, but she wondered what sort of errands he had to take care of, and why he didn't have a bunch of people to do that for him. She was beginning to see that Adam was a very take-charge kind of guy, and while he had hired help for a variety of menial tasks, he was also a man who liked to deal with things head-on. She admired that, and found the passion he exhibited as being very sexy. Beth didn't want to admit it because it felt wrong in many ways, and that may have been why it was so exciting, but she was having strong feelings of attraction for Adam. He was so strong, bold, and confident. It was his take-charge attitude that just made her melt. He was dominant without being controlling, and weird like a lot of men were. He just didn't have the ego, or the childlike neediness that most men she had been around exhibited. She wasn't sure she should be feeling this way, and she was going to do her best to bury it. Chapter 4. Beth sat down on the fancy living room sofa, plopped her feet up and let out a huge sigh. The beautiful mansion had been far dirtier than it had appeared upon initial inspection, and she had cleaned the entire downstairs today. She would do the upstairs tomorrow, but for now, she was going to take a few minutes to rest. She figured she had a little while before she would have to fix dinner for Adam, and she hoped that he wasn't going to be home for a while. There was almost nothing that was going to make her want to move from this spot. Then she heard Adam walking downstairs. She wasn't even aware that he was home. The house was so huge that it was like one big maze. She doubted that Adam had even been in every room, but she guessed she would learn them all as she cleaned everything. Wow, somebody looks tired, Adam said. I'm okay. Want me to get dinner started? Beth said. I have a better idea. How about I take you out for dinner? Adam asked. Beth had to do a double take. She wasn't sure she had heard him right. What? Beth asked. You've worked so hard cleaning this house today, and I know how dirty it was since it's been a while, so I was thinking I'd take you out for dinner tonight. What do you think? Are you up for it? Wow, that would be great. Thanks, Beth said. No problem. Now go upstairs and get changed. I'm taking you someplace fancy. Fancy? Wow, I don't know I've ever really been anywhere like that, Beth said, immediately regretting that she didn't know when to shut up. It's a nice place. You will love it. I'm not sure I have anything to wear to someplace like that, Beth began. Adam held up his hand, cutting her off. He gave her a sly grin. It will be fine. Trust me. When Beth walked into her room, she saw what the grin was about, Lying on her bed was the most beautiful dress she had ever seen. Adam had bought this for her? She wasn't sure what to think. He had asked her out for a fancy dinner, and now he was buying her dresses. Was he just being sweet because it was her first week, or was there something else going on? She decided that right now she didn't care. The dress fit perfectly, and when she walked downstairs, Adam smiled approvingly. The man had excellent taste, and he had even picked out the perfect size. She wasn't sure if that was sexy or creepy. There was often a fine line, she decided. Her first fine dining experience at a 5-star restaurant was perfect. The food and the atmosphere had placed a smile on her face that would take weeks to come off. It was all a bit too much to take in, and she found herself just succumbing to the overwhelming sensations that were all around her, assaulting her senses. The conversation between her and Adam was so easy and relaxed. She found out about his growing up, and then his evolution into one of the greatest footballers to play the game, and his reasons for leaving the game behind. She admired that he wanted to give back and work in either broadcasting or coaching. He had even expressed an interest in starting up his own line of sporting goods, plus he had several endorsement deals lined up for the near future. She loved to hear him talk about all of his plans and the passion and excitement in his voice. It made her excited for him, and she hoped that she would be able to witness much of this, since she was now living with him. He had even asked her about herself. She had been a little shy about revealing the details of her less than stellar life, and especially her past, but he listened intently and gave advice to her in a very non-judgmental way. She really appreciated that. He was such a great listener. It felt amazing to really relax and open up with someone, even if it did take a huge risk and leap of faith on her part. She was very glad that she did it in the end. It helped her connect with him, and he seemed to be really connecting with her as well. Beth's feelings for Adam were intensifying, and she had to admit to herself that she was starting to fall a bit for him. She told herself it was silly. He was her employer, and besides, his status and prestige were far above her or anything she would ever accomplish. Why in the world would he be interested in her? It was a nice little fantasy, but she tried to keep a level head and chalked it all up to a nice dinner with a new friend. But that night when they returned to the house, they decided to hang out in the huge living room for a while, even though it was getting late, and she felt like she was ready to drop. Adam insisted, and poured them both a few drinks while they listened to some romantic music. They talked more about their individual plans for the future. At some point in the evening, Adam abruptly stood up and extended his hand to her. She took it and he pulled her into a dance, allowing the romantic sounds to fill the air. Beth was not sure what was going on or why, but she was enjoying the feeling of letting go. It was freeing, and the romance that was filling the air was a new sensation to her. She understood at that moment that she had never really been romanced before, and it took her a while to understand it was happening to her right then. She had to question it several times to herself. At the end of the evening, as she was starting up the stairs to her room, Adam surprised her once again by grabbing her hand and pulling her close. He looked deeply into her eyes and
censored
her softly on the lips. Then he let her hand go, smiled at her sweetly, and walked away. Beth stood there for several seconds before climbing the stairs and moving towards her bedroom. She realized that her life was about to change. Chapter 5. The next morning at breakfast, Adam was his usual chipper self. He made small talk with her, and asked her if she'd had a good time the night before. "Yeah, it was great," Beth said. "I told you that restaurant was the bomb," Adam said. Beth had to laugh. She loved the way he talked. "It was pretty special," Beth said. She was wondering if they should talk about the
censored
and what it meant. Did it mean anything? Would he fire her if she asked too many questions about it? Was she just reading too much into things? He was a really passionate guy, and maybe he had just gotten caught up in the moment. Beth tried to concentrate on her work, which for the most part involved cleaning the upstairs and the bathrooms. It was mind-numbing work, which allowed her mind to wander, and it kept drifting to the thoughts of the previous evening. The uncertainty of things was really nagging at her, and the more they did, the more she realized the intensity of the feelings she was starting to have for Adam. She tried to force them down, because she didn't want it to interfere with their working relationship, especially if he didn't feel the same way. Given Adam's status, he was probably used to women flaunting over him, and
censored.
One of them didn't have to mean anything at all. It was just a friendly gesture to him. She wasn't sure, and the more she tried to convince herself, the more confused she became. She took a small break from cleaning to make Adam's lunch. She checked the menu that he had prepared and began to fix the food. He wanted 10 ounces of cod with 2 cups of rice and 1 cup of steamed veggies. She put the rice in the rice maker, which made things so much easier, the cod in the oven, and a steamer bag of frozen veggies in the microwave. It was getting easier, and she was starting to learn shortcuts to making good food without killing yourself. Thank God for YouTube. Lunch conversation was about the same as breakfast, and though it was killing her to not talk about the
censored,
she held her lips sealed. She wasn't going to break on this. She had decided to leave the ball in his court on the matter, and just see what happened. It was kind of a curious thing, actually, and she was enjoying the not knowing, even though at the same time it felt like it was tearing her apart. She realized that Adam was a mysterious guy, and it was part of this mystery that added to his charisma and charm. If she started prodding and acting clingy, then it would not end well. She figured he would turn her down gently, and possibly fire her so that things wouldn't be weird. That night after dinner, she had just finished taking a shower when there was a knock at her door. She quickly dried off and put on her bathrobe. She was a bit nervous opening the door, but she tried to hide it. The thought that all that separated her
censored
body from Adam was a small robe belt, which could be undone with the flick of a finger, swirled in her mind. That would have been pretty hot, she thought. She entertained a brief fantasy of Adam just removing the robe and ravaging her body. She opened the door and Adam stood there, shirtless in a pair of silk pajama pants. His body was ripped and muscular, but not bulky. He had a lean, athletic look still, and his washboard abs glistened in the light. He looked as if he had just stepped out of the shower also. "Hey, I wanted to ask you what your plans were for the weekend," Adam said. Beth thought a moment, and realized that she did indeed have the next 2 days off. "No plans? Why? Have you ever been on a four-wheeler?" Adam asked, flashing that sly and devilish grin at her that continued to make her heart melt. Beth screamed loudly as the trees whipped past her face. She was on a four-wheeler several yards behind Adam, ripping through the woods about 30 miles outside of town. She had heard of people coming up here and riding, but she had never considered doing it herself at all. Beth had never felt like much of a thrill-seeker, and she was learning that Adam was. He loved everything that seemed to put his life in danger. It was an odd thing to her, but she had to admit that even though she was terrified, she was having a blast. It was such a thrill to have the wind ripping through her hair, and to feel this magnificent machine under her, hitting every bump and nuance of the ground, and feeling it reverberate through the machine between her legs. It was actually kind of
censored,
and she felt naughty for thinking this, but she was having too much fun to care. She had started out riding slowly until she got the hang of it, but she quickly picked it up, and at Adam's encouragement, she had joined him on riding the course, as it was called. It was almost an obstacle course. The trail was comprised of several hills and bumps that threatened to throw her off the four-wheeler, and near constant twists and turns through heavily wooded areas, with just enough of a trail forged to fit the four-wheeler through. Adam was appreciating that she was willing to throw caution to the wind and try anything fun. She just needed a little push first. They finished the course, and Adam gave her a high five and a hug. She loved the way he felt against her, and she caught the gleam in his eye when he stared at her, again flashing that devilish smile. They decided to grab some lunch, and then headed home. They had taken Adam's new Ferrari today. Another first for Beth. She had always wanted to ride in a fancy sports car, but she had never even had the guts to test drive one. She always figured the dealer would take one look at her and tell her to get lost. It wasn't like you could just test drive a $250,000 car. Apparently, there were rules. That evening, they decided to spend time at the house watching some movies on Netflix. She had never seen the show Breaking Bad, but it had been all the rage a few years ago, and it was Adam's favorite show. He wanted her to watch it, so she gave in, and much to her surprise, she became totally hooked on it right away. It had been a long time since a show had grabbed her and pulled her into it that quickly. Halfway through the third episode, Adam pulled her close to him and
censored
her sweetly on the lips. It had taken her totally by surprise, and she had almost pulled away at first out of surprise, but once his lips touched hers, she instantly fell into the sweetness of it. "Wow, that was nice," Adam said. "Yeah, it was," Beth replied. "I want to take you to LA with me for the week," Adam said. "What?" Beth exclaimed. "Have you ever been?" "No, but I've always wanted to." Christian, even though he could afford it, had refused to take her anywhere. He was such a sleaze. "Great, then it's settled. I have a little business to attend to, but most of the week will be totally free." "I can't believe you are asking me to go. What about my work?" "Well, I asked your boss if you could have the week off and he said yes." "He must be a really cool guy," Adam teased. Beth laughed as she snuggled closer to him. They arrived in LA the next evening. The weather was beautiful, and Beth marveled at the sights she saw just traveling from the airport to the hotel. She had never really seen the ocean before, and the beautiful sandy beaches that lined the coast were breathtaking. After they settled into the hotel and unpacked, they decided to do some sightseeing. Adam had been in LA many times before, and he made an excellent tour guide. First, they stopped at the Hard Rock Cafe and grabbed some lunch. Beth was enamored with the wonderful artifacts and the atmosphere of the place. She had always heard it was the coolest place to visit, and she was glad that the hype was true. Then it was on to Hollywood. Adam had hired a driver and a car to take them anywhere they wanted to go for the week. Beth wasn't even going to ask how much that cost, but the car was exquisitely awesome. It was a brand new SUV, which Beth actually preferred to the limo, because a limo just drew too much attention. Adam seemed to echo her sentiments on the subject as well. They visited Grauman's Chinese Theater and took several pictures. Beth had always dreamt of visiting somewhere like this, and it was even better in person. They then spent hours walking up and down the strip, looking at the stars on the Walk of Fame. Beth figured Adam had to be getting annoyed by her suggesting he take her picture after every other actor's name that she came to. It was just a mind trip for her to realize that so many of these people had been standing right there to commemorate their achievements. Beth had always been a bit of a film buff, so Hollywood was the greatest place on earth in her eyes. They spent the rest of the afternoon going in and out of every souvenir shop that they came to. Beth couldn't believe how much cool stuff Adam was buying her. It was so sweet, but she also felt bad about it. Although he insisted, she felt a bit like she was being a loafer. That wasn't her nature, and she wasn't used to people buying her things, but at the same time it felt really nice to be taken care of. They ended the evening hanging out at the hotel room. Adam had reserved the biggest room in the place. It even had a bowling alley in the middle of the room. She had never seen anything like this before. She didn't even like bowling, but she and Adam decided not to waste it since it was there. Adam proved to be excellent at bowling too. She was starting to think that he was good at everything. He never seemed to lose no matter what he did. She found it to be both irresistible and strange. He was almost too perfect, but she was sure that if she waited long enough she would find at least one small flaw that would make him seem more human. Every guy had a rough edge somewhere. They finished off the day, relaxing in the jacuzzi in the room. It was a large 8-person jacuzzi. Beth loved the extra space, and she was glad that she had brought her swimsuit. It was a 2-piece thong set, but she figured that Adam would enjoy it. She felt odd at first being so exposed to him, but she also felt that she should up the ante and take a few risks as well. Adam sat across from her smiling and sipping a beer. He had not spoken for a few minutes. He appeared to be mulling something over in his mind. It was like he wanted to say something to her, but he wasn't sure exactly how to go about it. The curiosity was killing her, so she had to ask. "What is on your mind?" "Is it that obvious?" Adam asked. "Yes. You look like you have something really gnawing on your noggin." "It's okay, just blurt it out." "Don't be shy now," Beth teased. Adam laughed. "Well, okay, I guess I will. You and I have been spending a lot of time together, and I think you know I really like you, and I believe you really like me too." "Yes, I feel the same way," Beth said. She could not stop the smile spreading over her face. It felt so good to finally acknowledge the elephant in the room. She had so much she wanted to say to him. She was tired of holding her feelings back. "Great, because I see us having a real future together. I know it feels sudden, and I don't want to rush anything, but I have never felt as much of a connection to someone like this. Maybe I'm crazy, but that is how I feel." "I know what you are saying. I don't think you are crazy. I have strong feelings for you too." Adam leaned close to her and put his arm around her, pulling her close. "I want to tell you something that I have never told anyone, and you may not believe me, but I'll show you if I have to. Like I said, I see a future for us, and I don't want to have any secrets." "It's okay. Adam, you can tell me anything." Adam took a deep breath. "I'm a dragon shifter." Beth let the words ring in her ears for several seconds, trying to fully understand their meaning. "You're a what?" "I'm a dragon shifter." "I'm not sure I understand," Beth replied. "Shifters are real. I belong to a race of humans who are able to shift into other animals and creatures. I am able to shift into a dragon." "Are you joking? This is absurd." "Like I said, I didn't think you would believe me." "Well, you thought right. I'm not sure what you are trying to pull." Suddenly Adam grabbed her and in an instant lifted her up, and a split second later they were in the bedroom. "Jesus," Beth said. "How did you do that?" "Just a few basic movements at 10 times human speed." "I don't understand what is going on." "I know. That's why I'm going to show you." A few minutes later, they were on the roof of the hotel. Beth was terrified of heights and refused to go near the edge. She felt like something bad was about to happen, and she knew that all of this was against her better judgment. She took several deep breaths. She was glad she had put on her sweats and her hoodie. The evening had grown chilly, and a mild breeze blew across the roof. "What are we doing up here?" Beth asked. "The only way for you to truly grasp what I am is for me to show you." Adam took off his clothes. He was now standing bare,
Censored.
several feet in front of her on the roof. This was the first time she had seen him,
Censored.
and a million thoughts were whirring through her mind. His body was amazing, and she had to fight the instinct to check out his crotch. "Are you crazy?" she asked. Adam didn't answer her. Suddenly his body began to convulse. She thought he might be having a seizure, but she quickly saw that something else was happening. His skin began to peel away from his face as large wings leapt off of his back. His bones moved, lengthened, shortened, and contorted, creating a new creature that she had never seen before. The whole process took less than 10 seconds. She hardly had time to react to it, but standing before her now was a 10-foot-tall dragon. Adam was no longer there. Beth's whole body was numb with terror and shock. What had just happened? Where did Adam go? Was that him? She found her feet were glued to the rooftop, and she was unable to move. It was all too much to take. She had never expected in her wildest dreams to see something like this happening right in front of her face. Dragons were real. People turned into them. She kept repeating the idea over and over in her mind, hoping that one of these times, it was actually going to gel and make rational sense. It wasn't happening. "Adam?" Beth croaked. "Yes, Beth, it is me." Beth stumbled back. She had not really expected Adam to answer, and hearing his voice coming from the mouth of a dragon was mind-blowing in another way. Oh my God. It's okay. Don't be afraid. I'm still me. This is who I am. How did this happen to you? I was born this way. It runs in families. There aren't many shifters left in the world, but I am one of them. Beth walked closer to him to inspect the dragon up close. She hated to stare at him like he was a carnival freak or something, but this was the most insane thing she had ever seen, and she had to touch it up close. She ran her hands along the dragon's arms, feeling the roughness of the skin, and then she felt the wings. They were made out of fleshy material, and kind of reminded her of the wings of a bat. This is amazing, Beth said. Are you glad that you know? Adam asked. Yes. It means a lot that you chose to share this with me. Want to go for a ride? Adam asked. Beth smiled. Adam picked her up and held her close to him as he flew over the city. From that high up, Beth could see city lights stretching out for miles in all directions. It was mind-altering to know how huge the city of LA really was. It was like its own galaxy, and it almost seemed to have its own set of rules. The air felt wonderful blowing through her hair and brushing her face as she snuggled up to Adam's warmness. Even as a dragon, he still felt like Adam. As a little girl, she had often dreamt of what it would be like to fly above the clouds, and now she was actually doing it. The déjà vu of it all was surreal. Everything looked exactly how she had always pictured it, but it was even more vivid because she was actually there. In her dreams, it always seemed somehow two-dimensional, as if she was watching it on a great big screen. It had been incredible, but now it was so much more. Her dreams and fantasies had only hinted at the possibilities. Adam went slowly at first, just gliding over the outskirts of the city and then flying along the ocean shore. The beaches looked so peaceful at night, watching the water meet the shoreline. It was so captivating that Beth took some snapshots of it in her mind. She would never forget this. She probably wouldn't have to, actually. Adam had confided in her this huge secret because he cared deeply about her. He said he had not told anyone this secret before, which meant that he saw a long-term future for the two of them. The whole thing sounded too good to be true, and it was also a bit frightening. There was still so much she didn't know about Adam. He was so mysterious, but the fact that he had divulged the most important secret of his life to her meant that he was an open book only to her. It made her feel special and privileged. It made her feel loved. Afterward, Adam landed back on the hotel roof with Beth. She was still awestruck by this magnificent-looking creature standing in front of her, but in a few seconds he shifted back, and he was Adam again. Beth wrapped her arms around him, and the two embraced each other, enjoying the moment that only the two of them could share. Chapter 6. Beth had never been so nervous. She was walking down the aisle in front of 200 people, on the biggest day of her life. If she'd had a stick, she would have poked herself several times to make sure she wasn't dreaming, but staring down the long aisle, Adam was waiting for her. It had been a month since their trip to LA, where Adam had exposed himself to her as a dragon shifter, and it had been the most amazing month she had ever known. Falling in love was not like what she had expected it would be, or what she had come to know from romance novels and chick flicks. It was much more than that. She felt it was probably different for everybody, because nobody ever told you how it really felt, or how it happened to them. Beth felt that she had one of the most unique experiences of anyone around on the subject of romance. During the past month, she and Adam had shared every meal together. She had been cooking less and less. It was eventually kind of decided that she did not really work there anymore. She was Adam's live-in girlfriend. Then she had become his live-in fiancé. Adam had proposed in the most romantic place on earth. He had flown her to Paris, where they spent several days sightseeing and indulging in all of the fun things that Paris had to offer. To Beth, everything she saw in Paris was something romantic. She wasn't sure how much of that was in her mind and how much was just Paris, but she had soaked up everything out of the place that she could. It was a dream come true, and she kept asking herself how she had gotten so lucky. Then on their last night there, They were enjoying a beautiful walk along the streets of Paris when suddenly Adam dropped to his knees right in front of the Eiffel Tower and proposed to her. It was the most romantic thing she could have imagined. They decided they wanted to get married quickly. Adam and Beth both decided that they hated the idea of a long drawn-out engagement, but this meant that they had a month to plan a wedding. Of course, Adam had hired the best wedding planner in town to dream up the perfect wedding. Beth was relieved because for a moment, she thought that the whole thing was going to be on her shoulders. Adam told her right from the start that she could have any kind of wedding she wanted, and that he didn't care if he had much input in that particular thing, unless she wanted him to. She had valued any idea he had, and they had compromised on small things that they couldn't totally agree on. Adam was just the perfect guy, because he was so strong and secure in himself that he didn't get hung up on being right. If he knew he was right about something, he simply ordered it to be that way and didn't ask. When he did that, it was easy to tell that he knew what he was talking about, and it was easy to follow his lead. Now here she was walking down the aisle. As nervous as she was walking down the aisle, standing in front of Adam now everything in the world seemed perfect, and she had no stitch of fear within her. She felt as safe as she had ever felt in her life, and as certain as she had ever been about anything. Here and now she was ready to start her new life. She glanced over at her niece, Daphne. She had been the most adorable flower girl. Her eyes drifted over to Thomas, the ring bearer who was completely bored out of his mind. She didn't blame the kid, but she knew one day he would be in Adam's shoes about to make the biggest decision of his life. She hoped he was as certain as she was. The ceremony was quick and to the point, which was the way she liked it. She'd had a blast being admired in the beautiful wedding gown that Adam had bought her, but it was also the most uncomfortable thing she had ever put on. After wearing it for an hour, she was ready to be out of the thing and let her hair down to party. They both got dressed into something more comfortable and rode to the reception. The reception was the biggest party by far that she had ever been to, and probably ever would be, or at least until one of Adam's wealthy friends got married. His best buddy, Anthony, had been married twice already and was only 25. He was ridiculous, and judging by the way he was flirting with all of the bridesmaids, he would be getting married again soon. She guessed for some people marriage was just a habit. Beth loved all of the adulation that she was being given from all of her friends and family, and also from all of the people that she didn't even know. She kept staring at the huge table full of gifts that awaited them later. How in the world were they going to open all of that stuff? The end of the evening came with the first dance of the newlyweds. Beth was a little nervous about this because she was not the best dancer, but Adam guided her through it, and she realized that everyone was so in awe of the true love they were seeing between the two of them that they didn't care if she tripped or fell. She could have probably goofed up any which way that did not end up with her.
Censored.
And they would have been okay with it. It was the romance that people loved to see. That was why people went to weddings to begin with. After the wedding, as they were being driven to the airport in their limo on their way to London for the first leg of their honeymoon, Adam told Beth how much he loved her. "Beth, I vow to do everything in my power to give you the kind of life that you deserve and be the kind of man that you deserve. I love you more than anybody could love someone." Beth smiled as the tears welled up in her eyes. Adam leaned forward and
Censored.
her gently, taking her in his arms and holding her close. She could feel the beating of his heart, and she thought she could hear the beating of her own, and the two sounded in perfect sync with each other. She smiled, enjoying the sentiment, as cheesy as she thought it sounded. She was living in her very own fairy tale. As they boarded the airplane headed for London, she took Adam's hand and held it tightly. Then she closed her eyes, leaned back in her spacious first-class seat, and thought of beautiful things. Thank you for reading my book. If you like this story, I think you'll enjoy my book. Sold to the Werewolf. Please leave a review if you like this book. That's the best thing you can do to help authors like me, so others can find my books. It can be as long or as short as you'd like. Even a star rating is amazing and appreciated. Thanks in advance. About Summer Cooper. Thank you so much for reading. Without you, it wouldn't be possible for me to be a full-time author. I hope you enjoy reading my books as much as I do writing them. Besides, obviously, reading and writing, I also love cuddling my dogs, shouting at Alexa being upside down aka yoga, and driving my family cray-cray. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads, BookBub. Get in touch at hello@summercooper.com. www.summercooper.com. Closing credits. This has been Dragon Baller's Bride. Written by Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited. Production copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited.